currently, for every person who is out of work, we have 2.8 people who are in work. That's a fairly healthy ratio and certainly works for the Isle of Man. Unfortunately, it's predicted over the next 10 to 15 years that ratio is going to change quite markedly. We're going to get to a position where if we don't do something different, we'll have one person in work to every single person out of work. That is economically not a sustainable position. So we do have to consider ways going forward on how we can change that. One of the biggest areas clearly is in relation to people who retire, and currently obviously the retirement age is 65. When retirement was first introduced, retirement ages and pensions were first introduced, people didn't have a life expectancy of much beyond 70, so at best they would get about 5 years out of retirement and pension. We're now living much, much longer, into our mid-80s on average. This is another problem which government has to tackle, and has to tackle fairly quickly if we are to continue to have the sort of prosperity that we have in the Isle of Man. There are two potential solutions, of course. One solution is that we attract more people into the Isle of Man to cover the additional cost of the people out of work, the people who have gone into retirement or children. That would, of course, mean substantial increases in population. That's not something I'm particularly keen on. I would much prefer to see us perhaps working a little bit longer, perhaps working part-time after we reach 65 or possibly 68, 70. And actually working a little bit longer so we're still contributing into the economy, so we can still afford to pay for all the things that we want to have paid for. It is a big issue though, and it's certainly again something that we need to talk about in the run-up to the election, and indeed something that we need as politicians, assuming we're elected for the next 5 years, to actually get some serious thought and policy changes introduced. One of the great things I feel that this current government has achieved is reform of public sector pensions. Again, this has been an unaffordable position for some years now. We have now got a scheme together which does seem to make sense and will result in a considerably less liability to government as we move forward. It has to be sensible to introduce a system which is affordable and can be paid for. Whilst I know that some civil servants still remain concerned at the changes introduced, clearly you have to introduce these changes because people would much prefer to pay a little bit extra and actually have a pension than us end up in a position where Isle of Man government can't afford to pay their pensions. So I think that is a good step forward and something that we have to do. Again, in terms of social care, it is again a truth that we are living longer as people. We have more need for residential care, and clearly again the system can't afford to pay for that. I would support a 1% increase in national insurance to at least try to address some of the additional costs that are going to be incurred as we go forward.